Chapter 18. It's a night for celebration. Weary but victorious, the crew of the Argo has gathered together in a raucous celebration, the likes of which Technoblade has never seen. There are smiles and laughter and song, Wilbur leading the crew in a grand, hearty chorus, all care for the tune thrown to the wind as they simply delight in the beauty of existing, of living to see another day, of having emerged victorious from a battle long fought. The sails billow, the wind on their side, carrying them swiftly back toward port, and the setting sun smiles upon them as the sky begins to grow dark, stars dotting the horizon. The sky is clear, and the waters calm, and the very world seems to breathe a sigh of relief along with them. The crew is all gathered together, save for one. Technoblade worries for the briefest of moments that something is amiss, that not everything is as happy as it seems, because Phil is once again missing from the festivities. He spots him not far off, standing alone at the bow of the ship like he used to, and his heart drops as he catches a glimpse of hunched shoulders, his friend nearly doubled over the railing. And then, just as quick as the fear arrived, it vanishes as he catches the sound of a quiet laugh and hushed whispers. He creeps forward as quietly as he can, and his heart warms at what he sees. Amidst the waters, he catches a glimpse of dark, glittering scales, Phil speaking in a soft voice as he leans over the railing, a smitten smile playing out across his lips. His cheeks tinge pink as he leans forward, crooning sweet nothings that Technoblade surely isn't meant to hear, but he can't even bring himself to tease his friend. At least, not yet. Instead, he watches and waits, enjoying the musical sound of Phil's giggle and the way his friend looks so relaxed and at ease, finally free of the burdens that weighed him down for so long. He doesn't dare shatter this moment, not until Phil murmurs a soft goodbye, one last smile gracing his face as he leans down, blowing a kiss to the rippling water below. And then the sea is silent once more, and as Phil straightens, he catches Technoblade's knowing look. His cheeks darken, flushed a brilliant scarlet. Technoblade coughs. "Oh, fuck off," Phil says, but there's no heat behind it as he trots over to Technoblade's side, slinging an arm around him with a soft giggle. He leans his full weight onto him, and the captain grimaces as he nearly topples over, his arm curling carefully around the smaller man's waist to support him. "She followed you out here?" Technoblade asks. "I'm in love," Phil croons, ignoring the question entirely, with a sidelong look at the sea. "I'm gonna marry her, Techno. She's perfect. More beautiful than the sky or the sea, more precious than any treasure." "You're drunk," he retorts playfully, and Phil gives him a wink. "Only you would try and marry a giant siren. Only you, Phil." "I will," Phil vows. His eyes glitter with poorly disguised amusement, along with that damned bull-headed determination. Technoblade knows he plans to make good on his words one day. "I'll need a best man, though," Phil adds, almost as an afterthought. He shoots Technoblade a meaningful look. Technoblade's breath catches. He fumbles for the right words to say, torn between reminding Phil of his impending departure, or letting him delight a while longer. Luckily, Phil moves on all his own, his gaze glassy and love-struck as he watches the crew celebrate. "She's perfect, Techno. Never thought I'd get so fucking lucky. Didn't think I'd even live long enough to settle down." "If you stopped fighting people on the yard, you might have a better shot," Technoblade teases. Phil's brow wrinkles, scoffing out a laugh. "Where's the fun in that?" he says, before dropping his cheek onto Technoblade's shoulder with a muffled hum. Technoblade snorts, but holds still, allowing his friend to rest there. "Comfy?" They're silent for a few moments, listening to the gentle strumming of a stringed instrument, soft murmurs, and the clinking of glasses. "I missed this," Phil eventually says, his gaze trained on his son and grandson, who have paused their singing to regale the crew with a story of adventure. Wilbur is grinning from ear to ear, his arms spread wide, his voice carrying out loudly across the waters. "I missed seeing him happy like this." Technoblade smiles knowingly, understanding far too well, but lacking the words to say it. He winds up instead resting his chin on Phil's head, and pointedly ignoring the muffled complaints about his bony chin, as Phil squirms beneath him. His friend eventually settles with a dramatic groan, and they relax into a companionable silence. Together, the two of them lean against the railing, watching over their crew as those gathered begin another song at Wilbur's lead, this time one of camaraderie and celebration. Technoblade can't help the way his heart stirs at the words, at the promises of merriment and companionship. Beside him, Phil is singing along. Phil is singing, and that alone is enough to make his head snap to the side in shock. For the first time, he watches as his friend joins in the song, his voice lifting to join the chorus, still boasting a warm smile and a twinkle in his eye. His voice is a little raspy, a few notes out of tune, and yet still it's beautiful all the same. He remembers all the nights watching Phil stand alone and at a distance, a pained look in his eye with the locket cradled close, and decides this is much better. He's not sure how long the song goes on for, but eventually Phil leaves his side, the comfortable warmth against him vanishing. He watches his friend amble toward the crowd with a crooked grin and a raised glass, calling for more ale, and can't suppress a teasing laugh when the man nearly trips in his excitement. His laughter softens into something fond as he watches the way Phil reaches out to ruffle Tommy's hair, uncaring to the way the boy squawks in protest, before reaching up to do the same to Ronbu, who leans into the touch. He can see the look on Phil's face from here, and it makes his heart flutter. No matter how much he tries to deny it, his friend is a sap for his crew, his blue gaze soft with adoration as he stares down at the ones who would follow him to the ends of the earth if he asked. A smile still on his lips, Technoblade turns to face the sea, leaning over the railing as another melody fills the quiet night air. He'll miss this. More than anything, he thinks he'll miss these nights the most. The laughter and the dancing and the song, the camaraderie and trust between them. One voyage. A debt repaid. The sea calls to him, the moonlight sparkling across the calm waters. It's a night not unlike the one he and Phil spent together in a dinghy, paddling for shore. It's been months since then. Almost a year, and yet he can still remember the look on his face when they'd made it to shore. That damned grin, so smug and certain, as he'd left Technoblade with little more than a few passing words. "See you around, mate." He can't imagine a world without Phil. Not anymore. The bastard had been worming his way into his heart since day one, and now, as he stands on the precipice of a life on his own once again, his heart aches to imagine waking up to steady ground beneath his feet instead of wood rocking in the tides, and to imagine waking up to silence rather than the call of a crow or a bright laugh from up above. He's torn, split between the life he dreamed of for so long and the life he's come to love. And yet it's time, he thinks. He's had his fun. He's had his shot, his second chance at leadership. He made the most of it, but he's fulfilled his end of the deal. They don't need him as captain anymore. Phil has earned the loyalty of this crew 100 times over, and now he knows it, believes it with his whole heart. He can see it in the way Phil allows himself to turn his back on the others, in the way he doesn't flinch anymore when a hand brushes a pistol or someone catches him off guard with a familiar phrase. His friend is healing, and so is he, and with Wilbur at Phil's side, ready to help him lead, maybe it's time for Technoblade to take the time to figure out what he really wants from the safety of the shore. They've set sail for his old port. It hadn't been a conscious decision, at least not one they'd talked about. Technoblade thinks that a part of Phil knows the journey is coming to an end, however subconscious, and the old port had been a convenient stop anyways, an easy place to stock up on supplies and ground themselves before their next voyage. He'll leave them there, he thinks, and finally return to the quiet life he'd known before. "Techno, He hears, the soft call interrupting his thoughts. Phil is looking expectantly at him, his glass raised high into the air. When he's captured Technoblade's attention, he continues, and his voice cuts across the murmurs of the crowd, a hush falling upon the crew. "A toast," he says, "to our captain." He's smiling, a little lopsided, but shining bright nevertheless, and his voice is clear and strong. "To the best man I've ever known, and to the greatest friend I could ever ask for." There's a chorus of cheers and the clinking of mugs as the crew shout their agreement, and not for the first time tonight. Technoblade's heart aches. For a moment he forgets himself, and turns back to the sea as the weight of his thoughts threatens to drown him. The guilt and sorrow at the thought of leaving them almost enough to bring him to his knees once more. He can hear his crew adding their own toasts to the mix, none of them yet noticing his reluctance. And as the wind tugs at his hair, he wishes it would sweep him away, if only so he didn't have to spoil such joy. The crew has gone quiet. They've finally noticed. With a heavy heart, he turns to face them, and prays that his words ring true. "A toast," he says, "to the ones who believed in me when I couldn't believe in myself. A toast to the Argo, and her safe voyage for many years to come. A toast to clear waters and blue skies, and safe landings at every port you find." He finds his smile returning as he speaks, and suddenly the words aren't so hard anymore. "No matter where the tide takes us, or how far apart we may drift, Technoblade's throat is suddenly thick with emotion, his mouth opening and closing around the words that suddenly fail him. Nothing he could say will ever be enough, will ever be able to express the emotions he feels for them, the way they've stolen his heart and made it their own, and the way he wouldn't have it any other way. They showed him sympathy when the world turned a blind eye to his suffering. They welcomed him with open arms when no others would, even when he looked on them with nothing but disgust. They taught him what it was like to love, and be loved in return. They showed him the meaning of family, and he'll never forget the lessons they taught him along the way, nor the way they raised him up from his worst and helped him to become something new, something greater, something he could finally be proud of. "I will always remember your kindness to me," he says, through a voice that is rasping and fragile, and falling apart at the seams, and yet the smile on his face is the most real he's ever worn, and his heart is filled with nothing but warmth as he looks upon the people he loves more than the universe itself. And then he does the only thing he can think of, the only action that could truly express his gratitude. Technoblade takes off his hat, places it over his heart, and bows. These are the only people who will ever have this honor, the only ones deserving of such humility. Nobody else in this world has ever shown him such compassion, and so he'd get on his knees and grovel if they asked. His friends, his family, deserve nothing but his undying respect, and if this is what it takes for them to understand the magnitude of their impact on him, then he'll stand with his head bowed for as long as he needs to. Anything for the people who gave him everything. For Ronbu, for Tommy, for Tubbo, for Eret and Jack and Nicky and Wilbur, and for Phil, the world. And if his smile grows wobbly as his crew gathers around him, pulling him into a warm embrace and ruffling at his hair, he pays it no heed, instead savoring each and every touch and fond murmur as he's pulled back into their midst, fitting comfortably back into their complicated puzzle of a family, as if he'd been there since the very beginning. He spends the night drinking, laughing, and singing alongside the ones he loves, and for a moment allows himself to forget. It's easy to shrug off his woes and pretend, if only for a night, that things can stay like this forever. When he retires for the night, it's with a grin and a wave and a light heart, eager for the comfort of his bed and a well-earned rest. He doesn't see the way Phil's smile finally falters as the door shuts, leaving him standing alone beneath the stars once more. Errett joins him for one last sunrise, the morning they're meant to make port. He hears the soft pitter-patter of footsteps, accompanied by the gentle swoosh of a skirt, and he doesn't even need to turn to know who it is. His one steady companion each and every morning, the one who'd helped guide him through the good times and the bad. They're always welcome at his side. Especially today. Was it worth it, Errett? He asks softly, recalling the skeleton's words back on the island. His friend's shoulder brushes gently against his as they move to join him, settling their elbows against the railing, and allowing their eyes to flutter shut against the warmth of the morning sun. A small tilt of their head is the only indication that they've heard him, and the silence stretches on for what feels like minutes before they finally respond, in a voice that is altogether both as soft as a whisper and as loud as thunder. "It was," they say, and in their voice there's no room for doubt. "Because I was able to help you see." Technoblade smiles. "Thank you. For everything." Errett merely nods, but he can feel their warmth clearly, as if he were the empath and not the other way around. "I can't see them anymore," Errett says, and they're smiling despite their words. "They've finally moved on. You've finally let go." Technoblade smiles too. "I did," he agrees, returning his gaze to the sunrise, watching as molten gold spills across the sparkling sea. It's the dawn of a new day, a fresh start for all of them. He doesn't know what lies beyond, but for the first time, he no longer fears the unknown. His heart flickers with something else instead. A fluttering eagerness, a childish excitement. There's something else there beneath the surface. A quiet urging he can't quite fully ignore, but he shoves it to the back of his mind for now, instead setting his sights on what awaits him. It's finally over. He's going home. A captain no longer, he'll be back to his quiet life at the docks. No more thievery, no more danger. Just the smell of the sea, and the steady life of a dockhand, free of the Navy's scrutiny. It's everything he dreamed of at the start of the voyage, the thing that kept him going when he began to question what he was doing. And now here it is, just hours away from his grasp. He no longer owes Phil, his debt repaid 12 times over, and he no longer has reason to stay any longer, he tells himself. One voyage, he'd promised. Just one. Now, at the journey's end, he finds himself looking forward to the next beginning. Beside him, Errett hums thoughtfully. He turns his gaze back to them and finds them no longer smiling, their brows knit with thought as they turn his way. "Do you want me to describe it to you again?" he asks, offering Errett his hand. They take it, and yet shake their head all the same. "I already know your sunrise techno," they say with fond exasperation. "But do you?" The question stops Technoblade in his tracks. What is his sunrise? He searches his heart for the answer, and comes up empty. He thought he'd known what he wanted. He thought he knew what a second chance looked like. And yet now, as he stands on the verge of something new, he no longer feels the same welcome anticipation he once did. The promise of a new start is no longer as enticing. Not when it looks like this. Not when the only sunrise he'll see will be from his window at port, buildings and boats alike silhouetted against a sky that will never again be as open as it is now. Not when he'll watch the sunrise alone, his mornings filled with silence rather than soft conversations with a friend. "I don't know," he admits, and feels no shame in it. Errett has never judged him, and they won't start now. "I don't know what it looks like, not anymore. Maybe I did once, but now..." And he sighs, running a hand through his hair, taking off his hat to stare down at it, a symbol of everything he's gained, and everything he's yet to lose again. I don't know what I want or where I'm going, he says, and it feels like a lie, even to him. He trails off, looking expectantly at Eret, as if they'll give him the answers he so desperately needs. He should have known better, but even amidst his disappointment, he feels a flicker of fond amusement, because they merely smile at him, tilting their head as they turn back toward the sunrise, their hair gilded with the golden strands of the morning light. I guess we'll just have to wait and see, won't we? Well, I guess this is it. Technoblade and Filza stand together on the docks, only a foot of space between them, and yet miles apart. The Argo is ready to set sail once more, her former captain lingering just long enough to ensure she's well stocked for the next voyage. The crew is all on board, ready to depart. It's just the two of them now. Guess so, Phil says softly. I'll miss you, Technoblade wants to scream, but his lungs refuse to work. I'll miss you. I love you. I'm not sure if I can do this without you. But instead, all that comes out is a nervous laugh as he extends his hand to Phil one last time. He takes it, and their hands fit together as naturally as they always have, just resting there. We'll see each other around. Technoblade isn't sure who Phil is reassuring, Technoblade or himself. He nods, but still he doesn't let go, clinging on for dear life as though a tighter grip will keep Phil from sailing away again. Their crew watch from above, clinging to the railings of the ship, pretending not to eavesdrop, though Technoblade knows they're hanging on to every single word. Tommy's face is shadowed, but the kid is leaning toward him as if every word he speaks is made of gold. Ronbu and Tubbo are huddled together, whispering, conspiratorially, shooting him occasional glances. Fundy stands just behind the group, his gaze latched onto Phil, his hands clasped carefully in front of him as if in prayer. Nicky and Wilbur look thoughtful, though Wilbur looks disbelieving, while Nicky's lips are downturned in a frown. She'd cried when he'd hugged her farewell. Eret is unbothered, of course, leaning casually against the railing with that all-knowing smile. As he looks upon them, he feels his heart swell with emotion, bittersweet on his tongue. He'll miss them all dearly, each and every one of them, from Tommy's reckless enthusiasm to Eret's soothing support, to Nicky's gentle comfort to Phil. His first friend, and the truest. His soulmate, in a manner of speaking. Phil completes him in a way that no rank or ship or crew ever could. More than just another friend, deeper than family. Never in 100 years would the Technoblade of the past have predicted his soulmate would be a raggedy, bull-headed, sharp-tongued pirate, and yet now, as he looks at Phil, he wouldn't trade him for anyone else. He wonders if Phil sees him in the same light, if he thinks of him with that same fondness. Somehow, now, under his careful gaze and gentle touch, Technoblade thinks he might. All good things have to come to an end eventually. But that doesn't mean Technoblade can't make it last just a little longer. When Phil finally moves to let go, the pair of them holding on for far too long already, a protest escapes Technoblade before he can stop it, his grip tightening. Wait. Phil freezes, his eyes going wide and curious and hopeful. Yeah, mate. Technoblade swallows. I have something for you. And from his pocket, he pulls out 2 small objects, his fist curled, white-knuckled around them, and shaking ever so slightly. Phil's mouth opens in surprise as he slowly uncurls his fingers to reveal 2 sparkling emerald earrings, cast in gold and glittering like the sea itself in the afternoon sun. Techno. They're from my ship, Technoblade admits. The Animoy. They were the one thing I managed to save when it went down, and He swallows as his voice threatens to break, and continues. I wanted you to have them. and he watches as Phil's face flickers, his smile threatening to break, if only for a moment, as the man is overcome with emotion. You can keep 'em or sell 'em, I don't really care. I wanted to say thank you, Phil, for everything. Techno! Phil's voice is breathless, squeezing Technoblade's hand so hard it hurts. I'm the one... Fuck, mate, you're gonna make me cry. I'm the one who should be thanking you. But his fingers curl around the emeralds nevertheless, and carefully he cradles them, staring down at them with awe, as if he's holding the entire world in his hands. And then he's looking up at Technoblade, his smile so wide it must hurt, and then careful hands are reaching up toward him and brushing his hair away from his ear, and... Oh. Phil pulls back, and there's a new weight dangling from Technoblade's ear. How about we match? Phil says, and offers him the matching piece. Friendship and all that. For a moment, Technoblade is overwhelmed by the sheer love he feels for the man in front of him, in all his rough edges and bright light. Because, gods, what did he ever do to deserve someone like Phil? Phil, who smiles even while being left behind again, who locks his heart away behind open bars and yet deemed him deserving of it. Phil, who looks at him as though he's the most precious thing in the entire universe. All he can manage is a shaky nod, and with as much tenderness as he can muster, he moves to comply. He brushes blonde strands carefully away from Phil's ear, cupping his jaw with one hand while the other carefully slips the earring into place. The man leans into his touch, eyes fluttering shut as his smile softens into something more gentle, more vulnerable, and Technoblade wishes more than anything that this moment could last forever. Don't go getting into any trouble, Phil says quietly. That's my line, he answers, letting his hand drop from Phil's face, linking fingers with him once more. Warm hands against cool metal. Try not to get shot again. In response, Phil just pokes a finger against Technoblade's chest, right where the bullet had struck. Right. Technoblade laughs. Don't let Tommy get his wish of becoming captain anytime soon, then. Phil grins wryly. Little shit has it out for me. Better stay on your toes then, old man. Not that old, mate. I can practically hear your bones creaking from here. Shut. They're drawing this out too long. They can both feel it. He sees it in Phil's eyes as much as he feels it in the ache of his chest. He can hear it in the way their banter falls flat, their voices too heavy to carry the humor they once might have. It's time. He takes a deep, trembling breath and squeezes Phil's hands one last time, forcing a smile wide across his lips. Goodbye, Phil. Bye, mate. He doesn't want to let go, but with every passing second it just gets harder to move on. Phil's fingers slip out of his, and he wants nothing more than to grab them back, to hold them against his chest and never let go again. But he doesn't move, watching as Phil withdraws, folding his arms and leaning back and smiling in a way that hurts, because Technoblade's own feels so strained and forced. He doesn't want to go. He's not ready. He'll never be ready. But as the crew gathers around the railing, all shouting their last goodbyes, waving their arms and smiling as bright as the sun, he finds he can't stay any longer. And so, like a coward, he turns and runs. He hears Phil's startled shout, just one voice amidst a chorus of shock and confusion. He hears his name, hears pleas for him to wait, cut abruptly short, and out of the corner of his eye he sees a hand outstretched and lips half-parted. He forces back the urge to turn around and go back, because this is what he wants, isn't it? A chance at a normal life again? Away from voyages of crime and death and danger. Away from the sea which has stolen so much away from him. No more curses, no more battles. No more drunken nights in his cabin listening to Phil rattle on and on about his adventures. He runs and he runs and he runs, until his lungs heave for breath, his legs burning beneath him because he hasn't stretched them like this in ages. He needs to get away. Far enough that he won't be able to see white sails billowing in the distance. far enough that he won't have to watch his happiness sail away without him. And then a bundle of white feathers tangles itself in his hair, tugging and screeching with a vengeance, and he's forced to stop. Floof! What? Technoblade gets a hold of the frantically beating wings, gentle as always as he attempts to pry the cockatoo out of the mess he's made of his hair. What the hell are you doing? His voice is chiding as he scolds the bird, who bites at his metal fingers with a ferocity he's never seen, all the while struggling and beating his wings against his hold. Reluctantly, Technoblade lets go, scared he'll hurt the creature, and with another squawk, Floof takes to the sky, circling him once, twice, before lifting up to meet another shape far above. A familiar crow, who welcomes the parrot with a merry caw, the two of them turning to catch the winds that carry them back down toward the docks. Technoblade is struck by a sudden homesickness as he watches them go, the likes of which he's never felt before. And suddenly he knows, deep down in his heart, that if he doesn't turn around now, if he doesn't follow the story through to its end, he'll regret it forever. And so he turns to watch the ship leave. He turns and watches with bated breath as the Argo begins to pull away from the docks. She's truly beautiful, even as battle-worn as she is. Small and sleek, her sails billowing in the wind, she's nothing short of perfection. Every sailor's dream. He's never seen her from this angle before, never watched her as she pulled away from port before. It's as beautiful as it is heartbreaking, and he thinks he'll spend many a morning at his window, dreaming of the day she'll finally return, and his crew along with her. And then he sees it. Standing at the railing is Phil. His friend's arms are folded as he leans against the old wood, staring out at the crowded docks, and even from this distance, Technoblade can read him better than anyone else. His face is shadowed and distant, his shoulders hunched, his hair falling into his eyes with no attempt to hide it. His smile is gone, leaving behind something hollow and despairing. Phil stands alone at the stern of the ship. Phil stands alone. Technoblade is moving before he even has the chance to think. He's pushing past strangers, shoving aside nobles and sailors and merchants alike, parting the crowd like a fish through water. His feet pound against the old wooden dock, his blood roaring in his ears along with the indignant shouts and cries of the people unlucky enough to get in his way. There are angry faces in the corners of his vision, rude gestures, and even a few navymen looking suspiciously his way for causing a commotion. But he has eyes only for the horizon, for the sleek ship that's just untied its last lines, that's just beginning to slip out of reach. Wait! The cry erupts from his lips, unbidden as he runs, a hand stretching out to the ship even as the wind tugs at its sails, pulling it slowly away from the dock. Wait for me! He doesn't know if they can hear him, but he doesn't care. He won't stop, no matter what. Not now. Not ever again. He finally had people who cared about him, who loved him, and he'll be damned if he ever lets go of them again. The end of the dock is ahead of him, the ship just out of reach. There's nothing between him and the Argo but open sky and sea. He doesn't think. All he knows is that he refuses to be left behind, refuses to be separated from them. They're his crew, his family. And so he jumps. Technoblade is many things. A leader, yes. A fighter as well. He's level-headed and silver-tongued when he needs to be, but even the greatest of men become fools when it comes to matters of the heart. It's only when he hits the water that he realizes the full extent of his mistake. His arm sinks like a stone, and yet still he fights it like hell, kicking and thrashing with all of his might to try and climb back to the surface. He can see the hull of the ship in the near distance, so close, and yet so far, and as the bubbles spill from his lips and spiral around him, he can feel his panic rising, his wild desperation finally giving way to fear. He's sinking now, losing the battle with the weight of his arm, and in the chaos and confusion and the overwhelming fear, he doesn't even think to loosen it, to free himself from the weight. It wouldn't matter anyway. He should have asked Ronbu to teach him to swim. Should have taken Phil up on his teasing offers, because now he's about to meet the very same fate he avoided that fateful night. And this time, it's not out of some cruel twist of fate or a dark curse, but rather his own foolishness. He wants to laugh at the irony of it all. Surviving a storm, surviving Navy attacks and sirens and an island of bone, only to fall to the likes of himself. He's drowning. Again. And then strong arms curl around him, and he's being tugged up, up, up. His head breaks the water with a gasp, and his ears are filled with weary, rasping laughter, and he can't see anything but the familiar, smiling face of his savior. "We have to stop meeting like this," Phil says, and he's grinning from ear to ear as Technoblade clings to him, a teasing light in his eyes. Technoblade snorts, weakly, unable to summon the will for an indignant protest, too busy holding on for dear life and hacking up an entire ocean's worth of water. Phil kicks out strongly, easily supporting his weight in the calm blue waters as Technoblade coughs and splutters, cringing as his throat burns with the taste of seawater. "Couldn't stay away," he finally rasps, and can't keep the grin off his own face. He buries it into Phil's shoulder to hide it away, relishing in the warmth beneath his fingertips, and vows to never let go like that again. "If you wanted me to teach you to swim so badly, you should have said something, mate." Phil chuckles, his voice pitching into a petulant yelp when Technoblade gets in a cuff around his ear. He tosses his head back and laughs, that damned giggle that used to get under Technoblade's skin, now a welcomed warmth. A warmth he finds himself relaxing into with a laugh of his own, soft and gentle and happy. Phil notices this, and his teasing gaze softens, his grip tightening around him. "Aw, mate, don't go crying on me." "I'm not crying," he protests. "Just went for a swim. It's just salt water." "Whatever you say, Captain," Phil says, and the title alone is enough to make Technoblade's breath catch into a silent sob. "Can't believe you just fucking jumped off a pier after us." "Well, I told you I wouldn't leave, didn't I?" He watches as Phil's smile grows wobbly, and suddenly he's not the only one blinking back tears. "I don't go breaking promises that easy." Phil opens his mouth to respond, but a rope lands beside them in the water, and Phil's grip around him tightens, his other hand reaching for the aid. "Hang on tight, mate," his friend instructs, and his arms curl reflexively around the pirate's neck as he hears the shouts of his crew heaving them upward. Moments later, they're safely on board, Technoblade collapsing to his knees while Phil rubs circles between his shoulders. There's water and tears alike streaming down his face, and he doesn't have the energy or heart to fight it, as Phil cups his face between his hands, swiping gently beneath his eyes with a calloused thumb. "Miss me that much already?" Phil asks, and his tone is joking, but the words make Technoblade's chest heave anew, and without hesitation he flings his arms back around his friend, pulling him into a warm embrace. Phil's warmth is a comfortable weight against him, and neither of them has any intention of pulling away any time soon. Phil laughs, his chest fluttering against Technoblade's, and it's contagious. "Almost dying once wasn't enough for you?" The pirate quips. "You had to go and try again?" "You're one to talk," he mumbles, his face pressed into the familiar green jacket, heedless of the way frigid water continues to steadily drip from him. "Can't believe I had to save your soggy ass twice," Phil complains. "Guess I owe you again, don't I?" Technoblade jests. Phil grins. "Guess you do." "What'll it be, then?" "I'd say another voyage would cover it just fine." "And what if I wanted to stay?" Warm hands find his, and squeeze. "Captain Technoblade, the man who never dies. You'll be a legend." "Don't forget his first mate." Phil laughs, and in his smile is the promise of another adventure, and of dozens more to come. "Well, you said it first, mate. To the gates of hell, right? As far as I'm concerned, we're not there just yet." "Yeah." Technoblade agrees. to the gates of hell.